It might only be mid-August, but we got those October vibes and we're ready to hit the ice on the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, diving deep into the St. Louis Blues and their top 5 fantasy targets. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome back inside the lab to the latest edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Salute and shout out and a massive thank you to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Even here in the dog days of summer, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can find brand new episodes of the show. And in September, baby, it's back on and popping 5 episodes a week, fantasy draft prep. This is your source to make sure you're ready to dominate your league. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Mr. Rodin, what applies to today's episode is meat and potatoes. We always try and get you guys in 30 minutes or less with all the info you need. Today, even less so. St. Louis Blues Steel, one of those teams that hung around in the Western Conference, in the Central Division for most of the year. Hit me with your takes here. Top 5, once again, I think slam dunk number 1. And then after that, things get a little murky with this St. Louis Blues team. Over to you, my friend. Let's talk about it. A player that I'm sure is at your number 1 spot, near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, got to go with the number 1 pick over here from the St. Louis Blues organization right now. Number 1 fantasy target going into next season. Robert Thomas is the solidified number 1 in my opinion. St. Andrews College alumni, was there for a couple of years. Brings back the cup to the St. Andrews College for everyone to enjoy back in Aurora. So Robert Thomas, my boy over there, again, I'm on him every single season, telling him to shoot the puck more. And he has been doing that, and he did that last year. Career high 26 goals, career high 60 assists, and a career high 86-point season. He actually played for the first time a full 82 regular game season as well. So when he's playing and he's in the lineup, he's firing on all cylinders. 48 penalty minutes, 170 shots, 47 blocks, 16 hits. The giveaway or the takeaway to giveaway ratio has been very solid throughout his entire career. The shooting percentage of the last 3 seasons, though, is where I want to start as well. 3 seasons ago, 17.4 shooting percentage, 17 shooting percentage last season, and then 15.3 this last year as well. So the shooting percentage has been very steadily very good for this player over the last the last 3 seasons. Again, we've talked about him having to shoot the puck more, and he's almost doubled the amount of shots from when he came into the league back in 2018, 2019, 170 shots. I think this guy has so much skill in his arsenal. He's obviously a playmaker at heart. He knows how to dish the puck. He knows how to find his teammates, set up his teammates on the power play 5-on-5. But I'm saying it again, if he can continue shooting the puck, get at least 200 shots on net, there's no question in my mind that he has one of the most underrated shots, very elusive shot when he takes it, when he throws it on net. There's no question that he can get to 30-plus goals this next season. I think 95 points is the highest, is the realm that we can put Robert Thomas in now. Again, he's got to play the full 82-game season, which he just did for the first time in his career. But if he continues to shoot the biscuit like we know that he can, and facilitate the puck, use his skill set to find his teammates, make those incredible plays that he did last year, 95 points is where I'm putting him at. I wouldn't be surprised if if GMs out there were to take this player in the 3rd round. However, I think you could probably wait until the 4th or the 5th, but I would be okay reaching on a guy like Robert Thomas right now because he's showcasing the skill set that he's not just a playmaker, but if he continues shooting the puck, he can get 30-plus goals.
I love when you stick to your guns. I also love when we're on players early. This has been a player you've been talking about literally since you and I started doing this podcast almost 3 years ago. And now he's really starting to pay off for GMs that have invested in him, especially, you know what I'm going to say, on the keeper dynasty side of things. This is just a very smart two-way player, Steele. He finished in top 25 in Selke voting last year. That means he's up there with the elite forwards in the NHL that can bring it at the offensive end, but is also responsible in his own end. But this is what I look at with this team, Steele. It's hard for me to put a finger on what I think they're going to do in the standing next year because, look, the Nashville Predators, so much better. Colorado Avalanche, going to be there again. Dallas Stars, going to be there again. Winnipeg Jets, probably in the mix. Minnesota Wild, probably in the mix. And we're only talking about the Central. So this team, I don't think, is good enough to beat all of those squads that I just mentioned, maybe Minnesota. But we'll talk about it later in the show. Their offseason additions really didn't turn the page for me. Let's get there. Robert Thomas locked in at number 1. Let's move on to number 2, and then let's head to break. Pavel Buchnevich comes in at number 2 for me. I had Kyrou at number 2. I swapped him to number 3 because of Mr. Peripheral over there on the side of the microphone. Buchnevich's peripherals are just a little bit better than Jordan Kyrou. Not by much, but enough that I am leaning towards him. 48 penalty minutes along with 207 shots. He also was a little bit better with the blocks and the hits, not a real part of Jordan Kyrou's game. Pavel Buchnevich got a 6-year contract extension. He has explosive offensive ability. Again, though, Steele, I think some of these pieces, especially your boy Robert Thomas, playing in a market, St. Louis is a small market team. Robert Thomas plays in a big market. I think he's a superstar. Pavel Buchnevich plays where, maybe he formerly did back with the New York Rangers. I think he's getting a lot more love as a fantasy target that I really like for 30-plus goals and 70-plus points. I know 67 a year ago, 63 last year isn't exactly 70-plus points, but he had 76 a couple of years before that. Hit me with your take on Buchnevich. You want it after the break or you want to hit me right now?
I'll hit it right now real quickly. Look, this is a very close number 2, number 3, in my opinion. I went the Jordan Kyrou route.
Fair.
Like you said, the peripherals a little bit better in the hits and the blocks and the penalty minutes for Pavel Buchnevich. The shot category, Jordan Kyrou's got him there. Penalty minutes, Buchnevich got him there. So it's very close. At the end, it was very close at the end of the regular season. Like both these players finished 104th and 105th in fantasy rankings at the end of the season in fantasy points. So very close in my opinion. I think I'm going with the Jordan Kyrou route. Definitely a down season from his standards last year. He did again, another player that just played for the first time a full 82 game regular season. But this is a guy who has now shown us consecutive seasons of 30-plus goals in the NHL, 36 assists both the last 2 seasons. His career high back in 2021 of 75 points. I think he just had a down year last year. I think 67 points is not really a down year, but from his standards and his skill set, the guy who can shoot the puck like he can, I think there were times where he got a little streaky, went a little cold, and then just turned on the Jets and went all fire the cylinders every single game. So he was a little streaky last year. I like Jordan Kyrou at the number 2 position. Again, if you're looking for those extra peripherals, like it's not the biggest difference in the blocks.
No, it's very close.
Minute category, very close. But for me, Jordan Kyrou, from what he does and what he plays, again, playing on that top line with Robert Thomas, I'm going that route. I like both those guys, Thomas and Kyrou at number 1 and number 2.
Completely fair. It's also kind of bizarre how closely they are lining up with stats. 21 power play points for Kyrou, 19 for Buchnevich. Very similar. I guess I'm just buying into the explosiveness of Buchnevich slightly more. However, Jordan Kyrou is one of the best skaters in the game. You and I like to talk about edge work, explosive speed. Jordan Kyrou has that. If he can piece it together, you can't help but feel that what he has been outputting in terms of production is at the low end of his talent level. Let's talk about some more talent levels. The offseason additions. We got to get to the blue paint. That's going to be a hot topic when you're talking about the madman, Jordan Binnington. Let's get to it all right after the break. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. You never want a stressful ticket buying experience when you're heading to your favorite event. Steele and I have been loving this to scoop tickets for the Blue Jays this summer, and the Game Time app is your #1 source to get MLB games, comedy, theater, and all the events that you need in your area. Last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. Easy and quick to find MLB tickets and every kind of event in your area. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDNHL for $20 off your purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, please go enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode on the St. Louis Blues. Top 5 fantasy targets. Flip and I breaking it all down for you. We got so much in store. We still got to get the rest of the NHL teams done before the end of August. We've got mock drafts coming up. We're cranking back out our fantasy leagues out there. So hope you're staying tuned. Hope you're pumped up for the new season of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast Listener League. Back to the top 5 fantasy targets. I've got Buchnevich at the number 3 position. Like we both said, this is very close. Again, the peripherals also very close in the blocks, the hits, the shot category, the points even. 63 points for Buchnevich, 67 points for Kyrou last year. Look, this is another guy who has yet to play a full season in the National Hockey League right now. Last year was his best season for games played. He had 80 games played, 63 points, 48 penalty minutes, 207 shots. The shot percentage was down from 21% the year prior down to 13 this last season. I'm not saying it's a pretty big dip in the shooting percentage, but he's had a very solid shooting percentage throughout his NHL career. Even though he really hasn't been known for the goal scoring, he's been scoring goals the last 3 seasons. So this is a guy who has really been on the come up. He's hitting his stride. He's in his prime right now.
He is
29 years old, solidifies that massive contract with the St. Louis Blues. And this is a guy that you can depend on a nightly basis. So Buchnevich comes in at number 3 for me. He's just there behind Kyrou. It's interchangeable in my opinion, but I think Kyrou has a little bit more upside playing with Robert Thomas, facilitating that puck from Thomas, and being able to be in those getting those goal scoring opportunities and getting those opportunities throughout the deployment in the organization right now. So Kyrou second, Buchnevich third. Who do you got? You got Kyrou third, you said?
I've got Kyrou at 3rd. I literally have arrows here because initially it was Kyrou at 2. I swapped them around because look, Buchnevich is starting to also play really good away from the puck. He was also producing shorthanded. He plays on the number 1 penalty kill unit. So his deployment steal, his trust, the amount of minutes he might get this year, I'm totally here for the take on the top line. That's also why Jake Neighbours in Keeper Dynasty leagues, he gets a real good look on the top power play and the top line. His value is tied to being able to play with those 2 number 1 guys on this Blues team. Let's talk about him as a potential breakout right at the end of the episode because Jake Neighbours doesn't make my top 5, even though if he did on yours, I wouldn't hate it. Let's slide into number 4. You know, I've almost had on all my lists, aside from the teams that have really elite goaltenders, I have them higher up the list. I put Jordan Binnington at 4. And let me just hit you with this first and foremost. This Blues team allowed the 8th most shots on net last season at 32.1 shots. The blue line steal for me is the biggest concern that I have. It's haphazard. Torrey Krug is hurt long-term. They bring in Ryan Suter. I've got serious concerns about what this team is able to do night in, night out. And I don't know if I should or not. I'm really having a tough time putting a finger on what this squad is going to do next year because also when you look at overall offensive output, as I just kind of chirped the blue line, they finished 24th in scoring last year behind teams like the Islanders and Minnesota Wild. So the offense needs to be better too. But when you look at who was the most consistent or one of the most consistent pieces last year, it actually was Jordan Binnington. 57 games played, 28, 21, and 5, 3 shutouts and steal. His second highest save percentage of his entire career. He put up a .913 save percentage. The year before, .894. The year before that, .901. The year before that, .910. So he played very well considering overall the Blues at time really struggled in their own end and to score goals, meaning you don't need to have a science degree here to put this one together. That puts strain on your goaltender, and Binnington actually was very solid last season. So I'm going to look to him as maybe if you're really waiting on goaltenders, he's your second option. Ideally, you get him as your third, and you maybe have him as an insurance blanket, security blanket, what have you. That's my take on Binnington. I have him at number 4, although I wouldn't hate if you didn't have him there yourself.
He is at number 4 on my top 5 fantasy target list for the St. Louis Blues. And would you be surprised to see that he actually finished 5th in fantasy goalie ranking at the end of the year? He was above guys like Shesterkin, Sorokin, Demko, Skinner, Ottinger, all those guys last season. Vasilevsky, Jari, Markstrom, Swayman as well. Like you said, 8th most shots faced from the St. Louis Blues organization. He faced over 1,600, or he had over 1,600 saves last year. Over close to 1,800 in back-to-back seasons in shot attempts. So they see a lot of rubber. He played very good last season. Actually played pretty great, actually. 28, 21, and 5 record with 3 shutouts. Second best career save percentage, like you said. I'm not gonna be bothered if people go and target this goaltender. I'm telling you right now, me personally, that bridge has been burned. I will not be going back to Jordan Binnington.
I respect it.
Unless it is a do or die situation and he's just the only goalie available. That is me personally. He's burned that bridge with me. I don't think he obviously doesn't care about my feelings, but my feelings have been singed. They've been hurt over the last 2 seasons. I'm not targeting him whatsoever. I'm looking at every other goaltender besides him. But he still brings the value. I'm not going to just say don't go after him. He's shown that he has his step back in the game right now. I'm also worried about that defensive crew in front of him. So I would be a little bit more worried. I wouldn't expect him to get back to a .913 save percentage, but a .906, .907 with, a 2.84 goals against average, which he had last year. That's where I'm sort of putting him at right now for my projections. But Jordan Binnington is not a guy I'm going after in the goaltender department. I'm looking at others right now.
I just think this team is going to be fairly mediocre. And when I read into these numbers a little bit, I think they kind of overachieved. Look, Doug Armstrong in the front office, he knows what he's doing. The offseason pieces, they bring in the Joseph brothers. They bring in Radek Faksa. They bring in Ryan Suter. I don't know about, look, those are depth moves. I understand. But when your team in the top 6 and your top defensive pairing is Colton Parayko and Nick Leddy, look, and no disrespect to guys like Nick Leddy and Colton Parayko, who on most teams would be a solid second or third pairing. They are going to have to eat top pairing minutes and be relied upon very heavily here because your secondary pairing is Ryan Suter and Justin Falk. I don't know about it, Steele. This seems like a very volatile mix that could blow up in their face. However, that's just me, and we're talking about fantasy here. Let's continue our last spot on the list. A couple of breakout candidates, perhaps. And I want to talk about the backup goaltender in Joel Hofer, because as much as Jordan Binnington is the guy right now, and he proved last year, you're going to have to wait your time, kid. I think his time is coming, and it's coming real soon. So let's talk about it right after the break and wrap this bad boy up with a bow.
Few more players we need to discuss. Get to our 5th option at the top 5 fantasy targets from the Blues organization. Some breakout candidates, maybe some players to stay away from as well. Like I just mentioned, cough with Jordan Binnington, but we'll get to all of that and more coming up next. This episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. Just like in this month of August, you can find us Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 times a week for our episodes. And then we'll be ramping back up in the month of September, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, mock drafts, everything you need to know for the upcoming season in your fantasy hockey league. Let's get to the fifth best option for the St. Louis Blues organization that you can target for your fantasy team next season. Yep. Flip over to you, my friend. There's a few different guys I'm looking at.
Sure.
But I think, honestly, you could go either route, but there's a few out there. There's some options.
Brandon Saad maybe in that mix for you. Jake Neighbours in that mix. If you had a healthy Torrey Krug, maybe he was in that mix. He is not. He might miss the whole season. I'm going to go with what I think is the safest route. Mr. Reliable, quote unquote, for the St. Louis Blues in Brayden Schenn. Brayden Schenn had 169 hits last year, Steele, 51 block shots, 46 points, and 56 penalty minutes. I don't hate that he also had his highest shot total in 6 seasons with 170. He's still getting north of 17 minutes. He's still in the mix on the second power play and on the second line. To me, 82 games in back-to-back seasons. He's been pretty durable during his career. Yeah, he's been banged up a little bit, but for the most part, he has been reliable. I'm going with the 32-year-old, soon to be 33. He might be 33 already. He will be 33 in a week. There you go. Happy early birthday, Mr. Schenn. He comes in at number 5, Steele. And look, Jake Neighbours would have been the other guy because 27 goals and playing on the top line as a young gun, I really like Jake Neighbours, and he definitely has to be looked at on a week-to-week basis, or perhaps he is like your last forward drafted, because I do think in certain formats you could draft him. However, he's young. He's still going to have growing pains. Brayden Schenn been putting up consistently 50, 60 points for most of his career. I'm liking it. I'm liking the peripherals, and I'm going to go with the safer play in Brayden Schenn at number 5.
I'm going to go down the riskier path in Jake Neighbours. He's a younger mini version of Brayden Schenn. Again, both guys fill out the peripheral categories very, very well. When you look at Brayden Schenn, 170 shots last year, 51 blocks, 169 hits. Jake Neighbours, 138 hits, 45 blocks, and 145 shots. Look, this is a guy who's mirroring his game after Brayden Schenn, it looks like. Very good season in the last year in the shooting percentage category, over 18% in shooting percentage. I think that's going to take a dip down, but I think his deployment, his opportunity, and his other peripherals are going to continue to rise. So I can expect I expect his shooting percentage to get back down to a 13 or a 14 shooting percentage. I expect him to get over 16 and a half minutes of average ice time playing on that top line with Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas. Again, these are just projected lineups going into the season, but I think he's showing us that he is a goal scorer in this league, but he's not just a goal scorer. He can bring the physicality on a nightly basis. He can bring the pucks on net. He can fill out those peripherals. His takeaway to giveaway ratio, once again, has been very solid throughout his career. His short career so far in the National Hockey League, but I'm taking the riskier player. I think, again, Brayden Schenn and both Brayden Schenn and Jake Neighbours are very similar players in what they do on the ice and what they bring to the table for their organization. I'm going with the younger player, 21, 22 years old, going to be playing on that top line as projected right now. And I just like what he's bringing to the game. I know you like Jake Neighbours as
Yes,
well.
I do.
He's the sixth option for you. Schenn will be the sixth option for me. They're both very close,
Mhm.
interchangeable guys, but I'm going with Jake Neighbours because of what I think he's going to do this next season on that top line.
The upside is clearly in favor of Jake Neighbours. Keeper Dynasty, he is a very good target to go after this year. Invest in him now and really watch him blossom. 27 goals in the NHL last year, Steele. Look, 30-goal men don't come around that often, and he's only he's in his early 20s, so he has a lot of time to go in the NHL. Speaking of which, Joel Hofer, 15-12-1 last year with a shutout steal. He had a .913 save percentage as well and a better goals against than Binnington. So, yes, they are invested contractually and money-wise into Binnington, and I do obviously still think he is going to get all the opportunity in the world because he earned it last year to continue to be the number one. If he struggles or goes down with injury, Joel Hofer at 6'5", a former Portland Winterhawk, I love to get the Winterhawk plug in there. He is a goaltender that I personally really like. And in the near future, he will be the guy in St. Louis. Hard to say when, especially given that angle, the finger waving that Binnington gave him last year. Not yet, kid. It's coming. I got my eye on Hofer. I got my eye on Neighbours as two really promising young pieces. However, looking at this special teams for this team, and I'll just round my point out on the Blues on this steal, not good enough. The penalty kill, 18th best in the NHL. The power play was even worse than that. Special teams got to get better. Got to tighten up the shots on net. Need more offense. There are a lot of things to fix with this team, Steele. And then you bring in Ryan Suter, the Joseph brothers, and Radek Faksa. That puts a lot of pressure on their big dogs to perform. They're going to have to do just that, but we talked about them. Buchnevich, Thomas, Kyrou, Schenn, Neighbours. It falls on those guys up front in a very big way. Let's see if they can get it done this season.
Look, this is going to be a very tough division for the St. Louis Blues. They just missed out on the playoffs last year, but now with Nashville getting exponentially better in the top six forward group, just overall around in their organization, you've got the Avalanche, the Jets, the Stars to worry about. Again, two very mediocre teams in the Wild and the St. Louis Blues. So it's going to be a battle in that division, for those top three spots or even just for a wild card spot. Yep. But hey, maybe those young Kyrou, Robert Thomas, Jake Neighbours, the veterans and Brayden Schenn and Brandon Saad can get it done. And Jordan Binnington can play like he did back when they won the Stanley Cup. So who knows? It's up in the air right now, but there's a lot of fans out there rooting for the St. Louis Blues. I'm not one of them because I'm a Minnesota Wild fan, so we'll keep that hush-hush over there.
Yep.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day and tuning in for this top 5 fantasy target list of the St. Louis Blues. Once again, make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today's YouTube channel. You can also find them on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Have a great day out there. Good luck with all your bets this summer, and we shall see you back here again on Friday.
Peace.